Transition. Hello. Can anybody hear me? Just checking to make sure that audio is working. Transition. Hello. There we go. Yep, it's working. Alrighty, let's see if we can figure out where we left off last week. If I could spell. There we go. Identic models. A test for login. Alright. Let's do that, and then we can do this. Make things a little bit better positioned. Alright, so it looks like we were getting the API working. It creates the user, hashes their password. Today I want to try and see if we can't get all the user creation working. Hey, how's it going, guys? Got a decent number of people starting out today. I know Wednesdays, I think I was all alone for the entire time. It was a little bit sad. Alright. So, alright. So we already have the route for registering a user. I'm trying to think of what we need to do. We have the login. Right now, it doesn't really do anything when you log in. So if we were to start the server, let me see, how did we do that? It's poetry, isn't it? Poetry, run, not bit. We want to run server, and that should start. There we go. Unicorn starts. And then if we were to hit like this register route, which is actually coming through the server file, and it's being mounted here. And then we were to come over here, and that's requiring us to use JSON to submit to that. If we were to do that, it would create a user, but then when that user tries to log in, it'll either give us a failed message because the password didn't match, or the user wasn't found. But if it succeeds, it'll give back the user ID. It doesn't give us a token. It doesn't give us anything that we can work with. I'm trying to remember if I had... And yeah, Wednesdays are a bit late. Like, it'd be easier for me if I could do these on like Saturday, but like I generally am not available until like later in the afternoon on Saturdays. So it'd be like 4 or 5 o'clock my time, which would be like 8, 9 o'clock UTC, GMT. So a little bit harder for everybody else to jump in and join. This works. We can make this happen. All right. Okay, so we've got the register route. We don't need this running right now, do we? That's okay. All right, so we want to have it set up so that the user can get back a token that they can use to authenticate. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was on my iPad. I had the docs for that. FastAPI docs. Let's go to the FastAPI docs. So we got to set up some kind of authentication system, probably using headers. So that when the user logs in, they get a token generated that's going to get passed back to them of some kind. So maybe we might add I'm trying to think, like, how do we want to do this? Do we want to try, because I know like on my Wednesday streams, I'm working with JWTs and like RSA and encrypting the JWTs to pass data back and forth. We could just create our own token system. Hey Arian, how's it going? So we can create our own token system. I think that's what we might do, because like we created our own database migration system for this project. So I don't think I want to use like something off the shelf. I think, and like we created our own password hashing system here, like with our little hash password function. We're generating our own hash. We're SHA-256 hashing it 100 times, and then to get some real randomness there, and that's being salted using pulling a salt from the environment. So like we rolled our own password hashing. We rolled our own database migrations, since I'm using on the Wednesday streams where I'm building the code sharing service. I used Alembic to generate our stuff for that, and we're using SQL Alchemy, so we're using Alembic to generate our migrations. This one we wrote our own migrations, so we have our own SQL queries being run, and it handles keeping track of that in the database. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to create our own token system. So when this route right here, when it detects a successful login, it's going to generate a token that the user can use to access the service. And so as long as their token is valid, it will make sure everything is, as long as their token is valid, they'll be able to talk to the other endpoints. So what I've got to figure out how to do is how to check and make sure that a request has the appropriate token. And FastAPI has a way to do this. And I did mess around with it a little bit on Wednesday. So let's see if we can't find that in here. I think I had checked that on my iPad. I didn't bring my iPad into the office with me, so I don't have that right now. So we just gotta jump into this. Yeah, I don't know. I guess technically, I'm trying to think, what's the definition for non-fungible? Let's just what does non-fungible mean? It's unique. It can't be replaced with something else. For example, Bitcoin is on. So, I guess technically it would be non-fungible just because the token will be generated and it will be locked into that user. So I guess it'll technically be non-fungible. It won't be a Web3 non-fungible. We're not going to be using any kind of blockchain. There's not going to be, the source of truth is just going to be my database. It's going to be very centralized. There's going to be no decentralized nature to this. So yeah, but we just need to figure out how we are going to handle the headers. What is security? Basic. HTTP basic auth. What is this? Okay, so this is just expecting a username and a password header. And then it does this right here with the little pop-up. So that's something we could do, but that's not what I want to do, because this isn't going to be user-facing right now. This is going to be in the backend. This is a backend API. So you're going to actually be calling the API endpoints from your code, most likely. It's when we write the client that's going to upload files and stuff like that, it's going to call the API endpoints directly. Trying to just figure out where on earth the authentication stuff got to. Just where on earth did that go? Hello, how's it going, Miranda? Testing, lots of testing stuff. Where did the authentication stuff go? Advanced dependencies. Did I miss it somewhere? I thought it was under the advanced section. Maybe it was under just the tutorials. Just going through here. Header parameters. What does this do? Oh, cool. What program did you finish? All right, just seeing here. So that lets me grab a header. I don't want to do that. I want to have some way to say this route requires a specific header to be set. Response small responses. Security. Let's see. Maybe this is what we're looking for. Just reading through this, trying to... It's like it has mechanisms for like current user, like we can pass this stuff around. We can figure this stuff out from the state of the environment, from like the requests. I've just got to figure out how to tie each of these things together. Very cool. That's awesome. Using code to help with your homework is a great thing to be doing. Definitely makes things a little bit easier for you. Where are the routes posted? Like, I literally saw this stuff last week, or was it Wednesday? And now I'm not seeing what I'm looking for at all. Just keep scrolling, I guess. At some point, it's got to talk about it. But how do we authenticate a route? So it's saying users.me is secured, so I must have missed something here. Let's scroll back up. We've got get users.me, current user, get current active user. Well, to scheme. Oh, interesting. So it seems like if it requires, so like the route right here is depending on the user, and it's using a dependency, so that gets injected. And what it's doing is it injects by calling this function right here, the get current active user right here. And then right here it says get current user. So this one depends on get current user. Which is interesting. I didn't, like before, I don't know if you guys remember like a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago when we were working on this, I couldn't get the depends to work on other functions. So it looks like, just judging by this right now, that if the function is called while generating a dependency, it will further inject into that function. So as long as you're coming down a dependency from getting another dependency, the functions being called in that process will all have their dependencies injected as well. So the get current active user says gets the current user using a dependency function. If the current user is disabled, it creates a 400 code. Otherwise, it returns the current user. So all this is doing is making sure that the user is not disabled, because and then it gets this injected from current user, this function right here, and that's inheriting from the OAuth2 scheme. But it's basically, it gets the token. So the token is coming from somewhere. So I guess we'll figure out where that's coming from in a second. But it gets the token, and then it decodes the token to get the user out of the token. If there's no user, it creates a 401 authorized status code. Otherwise, it returns the user. So it's just pulling the user out of the token. And his token, it's getting OAuth2 scheme. So where is OAuth2 scheme coming from? He has that right here. OAuth2 bearer token URL equals token. So maybe he's putting that right into the URL, the token. So it looks like you would end up making a request. Let me see. Does he show how the request is being made? Might have to throw this example together if we want to see exactly how it functions. Oh, bearer is John Doe. John Doe. Okay. So yeah, it's actually just a header. So it is using a header. So he's using the OAuth2 scheme. I'm not sure what this right here is doing right now. We can look that up in a little bit. But this line right here is telling it to use the OAuth2 password bearer, which is jumping out to, if we go back down here, you can see in this curl request, make that a little bit bigger, it's like requesting out to the route on the server right here. And then it's telling it wants to accept application JSON, so it's accepting JSON data. And then it's setting a header, authorization bearer John Doe. And that John Doe is the username right here. So you have the user in the database, and it's going to look that up in the database, and it's going to grab all their user information, and it's going to pass that back. So let me put this back down like that so we can see what we're doing. So like that's what's happening there. This line right here is...
Someone's at the front door doorbell.
Give me just a second. All right, there we go. That's dealt with. Okay, so where were we? All right, I was talking about how like this injects right here whatever the values of that authorization bearer header. So we can use this to do what we want to do, because like literally, it doesn't look like FastAPI actually has a whole lot of stuff built in to help us out with managing a user session. All it does is provide the some basic systems that are based on specs. So like it's using the OAuth2 bearer. It has support for an OAuth2 bearer authorization header. So you can grab that and use that using this OAuth2 password bearer implementation that they have in their security package. And then that lets you set whatever you want for your header, and then you write the code right down here. You're going to end up writing your code that's going to handle all that, and by some magic it's going to detect that you've depended on the OAuth2 scheme down here. So like right here, it's depending on get current active user, which depends on get current user, which depends on the OAuth2 scheme. So it, by some magic, knows that this route is authenticated in some way. And so when you look at your docs URL on your website, it'll show that that route is locked. Right there, it shows that it's locked. So from that, like it's pretty neat how it does that. Just a lot of stuff getting threaded through here. I think we can use that bearer token. Now I saw like right here, because the way the spec works, it expects you to use a form, some form data rather than JSON data. And like the way we wrote it, because we couldn't get it to work with the form data. Like, I mean, we could, but it wasn't the most ideal situation and setup. So we ended up using a partial user, which is a name and a password. And that's using JSON. So you would have to send in the JSON object that has a user name. It has a name key with the name, and then it's going to have the password key with the password in it. And then that's going to get passed into here. The way he is showing it done here to make it compatible with the OAuth2 password spec, because like he talks about it up here. Where did it go? Must be sent as form data. Right here. It says must be sent as form data, so no JSON here. And so it's using, that's why it's using this right, where'd it go? Right here. It's using this, the OAuth2 password request form. So like he's providing all of the objects you need to create a spec compliant interface. So we could redo ours to do that same thing. Let's see. So maybe we'll go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and get this working that way. So this register, not necessarily the register. I think the register is not going to use that. We're just going to use that for the login, or do we use that for the register as well? Like this was a continuation of the get current user. What's the first steps? Does he show how he creates a user? Or is he just hard coding data? Read items. Yeah, and here he's showing it depends. This dependency will provide a string that is assigned to the parameter token of the path operation function. So like this is everything I was just saying. This is what he's talking about right here in this security first steps. Underneath, if you look at the docs, he's got like tutorial user guide, and then I just went down here to security and then security first steps. Like he does a great job with like writing out a lot of like all this useful information, just explaining how things work and showing how it works using examples and like working code. And it's really nice. And like, if you can find it where it's at, you can just scroll through and you can figure out how everything's working. And like, this is that magic. He's talking about that magic right here, where it just seems to know that that route is authenticated. It will know, can use this dependency to find a security scheme in the open API schema and the automatic API docs. So like when you look at the API docs, that route will now have a little lock on it. That's what he's talking about here. And like here, he's talking about like the authorization header, check if the value is bearer plus some token, and it'll return the token as a string. Now, I have a question for you guys. Can you see my cursor very well? Or should I, next time, look into having something added onto my cursor to make it easier to follow? That's something I can definitely do. I want to make it a little bit as easy as I can for you guys. Like if the text is too small, let me know. We can adjust that. We can make that better. So let me know if there's anything I can do to make the stream a little bit better for you. But yeah, so like he's just explaining like all that stuff I was just talking about, like how it sets the header. If it doesn't see an authorization header with a bearer token, it's going to give a 401 status code unauthorized. So it's automatically going to do that for you. That just comes built in. As long as you're depending on that OAuth2 scheme it'll handle giving you a 401 status code if they don't provide the authorization token. So you don't even have to think about it. And that's why I'm trying to like follow these docs. I could do all of this myself. I could write all of this code myself and make it function the way I want it to function. But I want to try and use what FastAPI is offering to me, because it'll handle a lot of stuff for me, and I won't have to do an if authorization header exists and any of that. So it's working for Kintech. If anybody else is having difficulty reading anything, let me know. We can definitely make sure everything's the right size, and like if you're having trouble following where my cursor is at, because I'm using it as a pointer. Like I'm pointing at some text in here, explaining what's happening, explaining how his documentation works. So if like you can't see my cursor very well, let me know. I will definitely look into. I might just add something to it. I'm gonna look into it. There's some interesting things I can do, but definitely let me know if there's anything I can do to make the stream better for y'all. All right. So that's how he's done that setup, and like he's showing again how it works. Like right here, he's making that request. He's making that request right here. He's saying accept application JSON, but there's no authorization header. There's no bearer token here, and here it comes back not authenticated, and it's just saying. So it's giving that 401 not authenticated. Yeah, it says right here 401 not authenticated. And so like if you scroll back up and you look at this code, nowhere in this code is he making a check for any of that stuff. He's nowhere in this code is he raising a 401 error. And like that's all being handled by this one line of code, and he's telling it that this route right here is using that code. It's locked by that OAuth2 schema, that scheme, right, by just doing this right here. Just depends OAuth2 scheme. So it's as simple as that. It's really simple stuff. It's just a matter of understanding it and learning how it works. And so I'm just jumping through this code right now to figure out how I want to organize my stuff. So I'm going to go back to the, like, not the get current user. Okay, the get current user, we'll just skip through this real quick. See what he's doing here. He's creating a user model. So like we've already done that. Like that was that the week before? The week before that, I think. So he's just doing then the get current user. All right, and then get current user dependency. So he's showing how he built up all this code. I'm not seeing anything right now that I need to use. And like currently, the way he's doing it, he isn't actually using anything from the database. He's just returning back the current user, and the current user. So like right here, he's got current user. He's just returning back current user, right? And where does current user come from? It depends on the get current user function, and that is using the fake decode token, and it's just passing the token that it got from the OAuth2 scheme, which again is that header, that authorization header, and it's passing that into the fake decode token, which is right here. And all it's doing is it's creating a fake user. It's just creating a John Doe user where the username is the token that it just got from the OAuth2 scheme. So you could set, so long as you have that authorization bearer, whatever you put after that bearer in that token string, so like you're gonna have, we come over here, like we're gonna have like localhost. That's gonna be like 9090/API/v1/login, and then it's gonna have headers on there, and you're gonna have a header authorization, and it's gonna have bearer. So it has to have that right there, and then whatever you put here, this bit right here is going to be what this puts into this token variable. So it's expecting this bit to be here. It's expecting this authorization header to be here. And it's expecting the authorization header to start with the word bearer. So it knows that it's a bearer token. And then whatever is after bearer is going to be our token. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this system. So when our user logs in, it's going to send back a token. And now whenever they make a request to a URL that requests authorization, they're going to have to give back that token inside of this header. So it's going to be this, and then it's going to be the token that this route gives them. This route right here. And I'm just going to continue using the partial user. We're not going to go for a full-on OAuth 2 implementation. Maybe we should. Should we, like, yeah, we're going to go for a full-on OAuth 2 implementation. So we're going to be getting rid of this, and we're going to be changing this out for that code I showed you before that he's using, that uses forms. So things are going to be a little bit different on your authorization step than it will be for all your other requests, because all your other requests are going to be JSON. But your first request, either to register a user or to log in, will be using a form post. All right. So then let's see. What do we need to do to make that happen? Does he tell us how to do that here? Other models, code size. I don't think he shows how to do that here. That's the next step, which is the step where we jumped into this section of the documentation. So like right here, we get down here, he's doing it right here. This is what we're going to do right now. We're going to implement this. And where does that come from? That comes from right here. So we're going to get that. We're going to come over here, and we're going to delete this partial user. We're not going to use the partial user anymore. Get rid of that. We don't need the base model right now. We just need to come up here. We're going to do from FastAPI security, import our OAuth 2 password bearer. So that's the part that's going to grab our token from our request headers. And then the OAuth 2 password request form, that's going to grab the username and the password from the data that the user submits when they register a user and when they log in a user. Now, I'm doing this route right here. This is not secure. This is not a good way to handle that right now, because they can just keep spamming creating users. So we're going to want to hook this up to a front end where we can like put like a CAPTCHA on there or something to prevent them from spamming, a bot spamming creating users. But for now, I'm going to leave it the way it is so that it's nice and simple. In the future, I'll modify this to require it to be authenticated. And so what that'll do is when our front-end app, what is going to be running in the browser, sends a request back, it's going to send back a request with a token itself, so only a user can register another user. And we'll probably even limit this to just certain kinds of users, so we can limit who can create new users. All right. So then we got to put this right here, right? Like that's all he has to do for that. Yeah, so like that's right there, right like that. And then he says to use depends. So what is that doing? I'm not totally sure. That must be, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So maybe let's jump into this code right here. What does this look like? So we're looking at the password request form code. And I just want to see here. It gets a grant type, it gets a username, it gets a password, it gets a scope, it gets a client ID, and it gets a client secret. Interesting. So maybe this is more advanced than what we want to be using. Does he show... Just trying to see here, does he use any of that stuff? You know what, maybe he doesn't. And that actually works out great for us. The reason why that works out great for us is because then we could create a client ID and a client secret. So rather than having a user create it, we can literally say, all right, when you request, here's your client ID, here's your client secret, use these to create the new user. So that's probably how we'll authenticate that. There's also scope. So like what that's going to do is that's going to tell it what kind of permissions this user needs to log in with. Like, do they need to be able to view other users? Do they need to be able to upload files? Do they need to be able to delete files? Like, you have all these role permissions that they get, and you can define that inside the scopes. And that's what that does. So, like, if you ever, like, authenticated with, like, Google or GitHub or Discord on another website, you'll see like it'll list out like all the permissions that login is going to get access to. That is this right here. That's this scope. Though each one of those items is a scope. So that it gets back a list of different scopes that it's going to have access to. And it requests them. And so you can enumerate exactly what's going on. And you can limit what each user is doing and know like, all right, this token is limited to just the stuff they need to use. And that increases security, because if you have a user who just needs to be able to get a user's email address, they just need to be able to have you log in so that they can get your email address from my website to authenticate you, then all they have to do is request that email scope, right? And now if someone steals their token, they can't go in and delete your files because you only gave that token permission to get your email address. And that's why we do this. That's why we have these scopes. It increases security by each app saying, all right, this is what I need to be able to do. Don't let me do anything else. And that's what's happening there. So we're going to go ahead and use this because I think we can use this further in the future. Right now, it's not super useful. We just care about the username and the password. So we're going to just use it for that for now. And then what did he call that? Like he had form data. All right, form data. And then this needs to depends. Right, like that. Oh, FastAPI, that depends. Whoops. Right, like that. Now, I'm curious, because he just updated FastAPI. So this, what we're looking at right now is the docs for, like you can see right here, we're looking at the docs for 07.0. He just updated this. And there's a change to how depends works. Poetry, run. How do I check what version we have installed with Poetry? Show installed package version. Is there a command for this? Poetry cheat sheet. Adding poetry installation, toml, package dependencies, add, remove, list, source. Just trying to see if there's a way for me. Doesn't seem like there's a quick way. So we'll just do this. We'll just jump right over here into our pyproject.toml, our poetry lock. Let's look at our lock. And then we're going to do FastAPI. And yeah, we have 075.2. And I said the latest version is 078. So I think we need to update our version. Poetry, update. What is this going to do? Let's see. See you later, Miranda. Thanks for joining us. All right, waiting for this to update. So we're updating PyParsing, we're updating NEIO, we're updating Click, ASCII ref. So why did it not update FastAPI, Poetry, install, Poetry, add, FastAPI? Let's see what happens if we do that. If you want to update it to the latest version, you can use Poetry update package. Update FastAPI. Nothing to update. So I'm not sure why that's not letting me update it. If the latest version is 078 and we have 075. It's saying we can do at latest. So let's try that. There we go. Now we updated. I don't know why that didn't update the way I thought it would. All right, cool. So now we've updated everything. Let's go ahead and get add lock and toml git commit -m updated dependencies. There we go. Make sure we're committing our stuff as we change it. So now that we have, there you see it just updated inside the doc. Now it says 0780. And the reason why I needed to do that is because in the past, depends required the ... right? Like that. For some reason, like for the defaults. I think that's what it was. Something in here changed where you had to have a ... And I think it was depends. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly, but I'm going to update so I don't have to worry about it. It's not something I have to think about. All right. Now, how did he grab the form data? So we have form data.username. Form data username, and then form data dot password. There we go. All right, so that works. And then we're going to do form data dot username again, so this way we can get the user that we just created. All right, and then we're going to return their ID. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to do form data, and then we're going to do this right here. Oh, and we got to do equals FastAPI dot depends. Right, like that. And then we're going to do form data username and form data dot password. All right. So that's going to check and make sure they're valid, right? Is that how he was doing it? Login, not user dict. It's like he's looking up the username in the database. If it doesn't exist, raises a 400 code. Checks the hashed password. Right here, he's checking the hashed password. And if it doesn't match, he raises a 400. And like, notice he says incorrect username or password. You don't want to ever say, oh, the username was incorrect, or oh, the password was incorrect, because then you're letting them either scan your database for usernames, or you're letting it brute force attack a user's passwords. So you don't want to tell it what went wrong. You always want to give back the same error message for a username not being found or a password being incorrect. So this way they can't, it's a little bit harder for them to figure out what is going wrong. Oh, I'm being tagged on Discord. What's happening? Interesting. All right, nothing super important right now. Looking at the Discord, we are one person away from 7,300 people. Good Lord. All right. Okay. So yeah, we're getting all this working. We should have, this should be functional right now. Now, did I have a test for this? I can't remember if we had a test for this. Let's check our tests. Migration API, test register route, test login route, Command Alt R. Let's run that. No module named multipart. All right, and this is what we ran into on Wednesday. And it's something we ran into on this project 2 weeks ago when we were trying to get the user creation working. Form data isn't just natively supported in FastAPI. So we need to add, was it just in adding multipart? Poetry add multipart. I think that was it. We'll find out in a second, won't we? And then we run this again, and no module name multipart. Multipart is not a package. All right, so this was not what we wanted. Remove multipart, and I think poetry add. This is the one we wanted. That installed, and now if we run it, there we go, all tests passed. So even though we just made like a fairly substantial change to how our code works, we're switching it from using a JSON object push up, and we're switching it to a form data, it still worked. Now, the question becomes, can we change this to data? And then change this to data. Will it still function? No, it does not. Interesting. I'm just curious. Yeah, no documentation found. Of course, no documentation was found. Client, where's client coming in? Client is coming in right here. We can do client.post. Does this give me docs? No documentation found. Really? Really? All right, whatever. Who cares? I wish people would get their type annotations working so we could actually get our documentation all through the login, register. I just changed it, didn't I? All right, so what are we missing? What did I change? What broke? Get rid of that. This was working right a few minutes ago, wasn't it? The test shouldn't have changed. Let me just maybe double check. Because the test shouldn't have changed. I don't think I have any changes in there. Is this is bit. We need to come over here. Do I have the file project in here? File web storages. Yeah, there's no changes to the test. So I'm not sure what got goofed up here. Test login route, test register route. Like, I think this should be data because we're using form data now. I'm very confused. Unprocessable entity. Are we missing something? Did we miss something along the way here? Form data. And if we come over here to API, form data, FastAPI depends, request form, FastAPI depends. Why did it work that first time I ran it, and it didn't work the second time I ran it? Let's put it back to JSON. I might need to pull up the docs for client post. Why is it blowing up on us? This doesn't make any sense. API app, HTTP localhost, register. It's like it's getting to this line. It's checking. The status code is coming back as 422 for some reason. It's coming back as 422 on both of them. Why though? Why? All right. Come back over here. Let's look at this. Where is this happening? Where did he show the example of it running? He sets the username. He sets the password. try this. Well, that wasn't what I meant to do. Poetry run python-m server. And that's running on here. Run that. And then we come up here and we do docs. Okay, no operations defined in spec. So if we do, what was the mount that we did inside of server? Mount onto here. Okay, there we go. So let me make that smaller. Right. All right, so we don't have anything authenticated yet. Try it out. Let's try it out. So we have username and password. They're required. Bob. We'll do that. So we got a bunch of debug data. So let's see if we can't, because we got a 200 okay when we ran it from here. Trying to figure out where things are going wrong. So like it's submitting it as form data. I'm not sure. Could that be it? Could it be as simple as that? Let's find out. Could it be as simple as we just need to set content? Ooh. Let's pull up the HTTPX docs real quick. Documentation. Where's the post function? Developer interface. Is this what we're looking for? Request content. Optional binary content to include params, URL, method, data, form data to include. So we've got to use data. I'm currently using JSON. So like I'm right. It should be data. Files optional, JSON optional, headers optional. Does it let me set the content type? Headers optional. So we're going to do headers. Headers. And that's going to be a dict content type. If we come back over here, it's going to be application x-ww-form-url encoded. And then let's make that data. Just make this a little bit easier to read. Still failed with 422. And there we go. 7,300 people on the Discord. If you're not on the Discord, make sure you join. We've got plenty of people to hang out and talk and answer your questions. All right, so why is this not working? I don't understand it. Not at all. I do not. Headers, content type. Let's set the accept header, maybe. We just keep setting headers until we figure this out. Still, both of them failed. How is up over here? Yeah, I'm not raising any errors. I'm just giving back a status error. Well, that's the thing. Like, maybe, like, that's what I was thinking at first. But, like, I've got, like, this one, the grant type is empty. And, like, if you look up here, it says required for username. It says required for password. I'm very confused about what is happening here. It doesn't make much sense. None whatsoever. So you know what? Let's do this. Let's pull up. Let me create a new tab. Poetry. Run Python. All right. And then we're going to import. Actually, this is a little bit harder than I thought it might be. You know what? We're not going to use this. We're going to do this. We're going to create a Scratch file. It'll be easier to work from here. And then we do from HTTPX import. Hit too many. Import. And now how did we do it inside of the tests? We're just going to replicate this code. And we're going to come over here and we're going to do, we got to get that client right there. All right. And then we're going to do async def testing. This is going to go there. Import async client. We're not going to provide an app. We're just going to do, we just need a client to a URL. And then we're going to do HTTP localhost. Was it 8,000? Yeah, it's localhost 8,000. And then it's the URL API v1. That's register. And then we're going to do data. So we're just going to see if we can get this working outside of the test client. Because, like, keep in mind, the tests aren't running a server. We're using a feature of HTTPX that well, that's the problem. Looking at what you're saying, Moses, is look at the request object. The problem is inside of my tests, it's not actually running a server and it's not actually making a request. HTTPX has a feature where I can give it an ASCII app and it will then call the functions on that ASCII app as if it was making requests to a website. So it like completely changes and takes out all the network stuff and just calls the functions directly, which is great in tests because you don't want to wait for the operating system to send the requests out to the process. So it's faster for testing, but maybe something weird is going on there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a whole thing where I can actually talk to my server, and we're going to talk between this file and the server running right here and see what happens. We can add logging to the server over here. We can add logging to the request that we're making inside this test file. So we need to import asyncio, import asyncio, and then we're going to do asyncio.run test. There we go. And then we forgot that. So this is what ideally we think should probably work. And we're going to run this file. Run 2. That gave us a 422 unprocessable entity. All right. So that did not work. Why did that not work? All right. So that's what we got to figure out. Name, Bob, password, secret. How can we change that to just show us FastAPI form data? How do we get the form data? How do I just get all of the form data? That's what I want to do. Or, like you were saying, use request, right? So like we can do, you know what? Do that. Do that. And then so form data is going to be FastAPI.request. Logger.log string form data. Let's try that. Didn't give me any info. Lovely. We called the register route. You know what? Is that the issue? You might be right. Let's go back over here. Let's just get rid of this. Yeah, you know what? Let's try it. That might be as simple as it is. Good Lord. It was that simple. Why couldn't it give a proper error message? Why was it saying 422? Now if I come over here to test API, and then I come down here, we can get rid of this, and we just gotta do username. Good Lord, didn't even see that. Data, username. Like, you would think it would give us something useful. Whoop, I put username in the wrong spot, didn't I? User, this is supposed to be data. And then if we run this again, there we go. All of the tests passed. Passing in data, we're passing it in with the username field. Oh, we definitely need better error messages. And like the problem is, and this is one of the things that like you have to deal with when you're working with somebody's API and like you're working with their package, you're kind of at the mercy of however they've implemented it and whatever information it's giving back. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna do anything different than just giving back that 422 unprocessable entity. But yeah. So yeah, it's just expecting it to be username and not just name. So now our tests are passing. We've switched it out to the new system. We know it works. We can get rid of this line. There we go. Okay, so now we're creating a user. We are able to create a user right here using the OAuth 2 password request form. So we are now OAuth 2 compliant. If we want to add scopes, we can add scopes. If we want to add grant types, we can add grant types. We have all that. We can use client secrets with a client ID. Like all of that functionality is now available to us. So we can get that right here in this form data, and we can add that functionality to our code if we want to. It's already there. We don't have to add anything new to how we're handling the form. All that stuff is already handled in our form. We just have to add the code to handle the form with that extra data. Like, that's the thing, does it not? Like, if we come back over here, like, it's not giving me additional information, is it? Validation error, string, message, string. Like, all it's saying... If I got rid of this, it's not even going to let me execute that, is it? Yeah, it's not even going to let me execute it. Yeah, I don't know. That's really weird. You know what? Let's go back to that Scratch file I had. We're going to change it back to name. Okay. And we're going to get resp equals. And then let's do print await response.json. Run that again. Okay, so that doesn't even need to be awaited. We can just do this. Run that again. Field required type. Okay, so the response that it did give back was more useful. We just weren't looking in the right place. And like part of the problem is that in the tests, because of the way I was doing it, the way we're doing it with HTTPX, it's not easy to get this information. All that PyTest is going to show us is that the status code was 422 and we were expecting it to be 200. That's all PyTest shows us. We could have gone into the test, if we go into the test, and like if we had this right here like this, we could have done, let's see if this would even work, .json, and then we're going to do, no. So then right here it does 200. We print out. Yeah, we could have printed out the details. All the details got them right there. So now we know. Like we're learning. Like this is like my first time really messing with FastAPI. We're learning what our strategies are for debugging. It's a little bit painful at first. You're gonna be jumping around, googling stuff, trying to understand what's going on. But you're learning strategies for how to figure it out. Let's set our test back so it's username so it doesn't blow up next time. Now it passes. There we go. Cool. All right. So now we're learning. We're getting a process down. We're figuring out how do we debug this stuff? Where do we get our information from to see what's going on? So now we know we can like print out the JSON of a failed request and see what actually happened, what actually went wrong, what was missing. So we're learning some useful debugging tools. All right, next up. So now the next step is we've got this function working. It sends back the status success used with the user ID. Yeah, printing in the PyTest did work. So we were able to do it there. And I think that's because all of that debug, all that information is actually coming from FastAPI. And so HTTPX is faking the request to FastAPI by directly calling FastAPI's functions. So FastAPI is working like normal. It's just HTTPX is working a little bit differently. So yeah, we can actually just print out our content and all our stuff inside our tests if we need to. And we don't need to create a whole nother file to do it. I'm on the latest macOS version. I don't even know what it's called at this point. Like, about this Mac. Yeah, Monterey. We're on Monterey. Okay, so where are we at now? Now we got to figure out how are we going to generate a token. We want to do the tokens ourselves. We're not going to use like JWT or anything like that. So we got to figure out how crazy we want to get with our tokens. One way we could do it is we could literally just do like a session token, like a PHP session, where we just give the user a random value, and that random value then gets looked up in the database to get all the user's information. So I think that's what we'll do. Our token will just be a session ID. So to do that, we need to come over here. We need to create a new database table, right like this. We're going to call it version 2. Migration 2. We'll rename this so we can keep track, so we can see in our logs what's talking and what's happening. And then we're going to have sessions. We're going to do plural. Create sessions. We're going to have a session. We're going to have a session ID. And then we're going to have data, and that's just going to be text. It's not going to be unique, but it will not be null. And I think inside of that, that text, this data column, we're just going to store like a JSON object. And so we'll just JSON dumps and JSON loads from this column, and the ID will be the session. Did I have a way? I don't see a way, so we're just going to go incredibly basic. There we go. Why is that? Run maybe static or whatever. Run migration 2. We're creating the sessions table. It's going to have data. It's going to have the primary key. And one thing we will do is we will have revoked is going to be text and not null. We'll just do that, not null. Can I do a default SQLite column default? Is it that simple? All right, cool. Default false. All right. So now we can revoke a session. We don't have to let it run forever, like work forever. And then we need to do created integer. We'll just set that to, that will get set to the timestamp it was created. So this way we can limit the age of our sessions. Like we don't want to have a session that lasts forever. We want to limit them somehow, so people have to log back in. So that's how we'll handle that. And we might, you know what we'll do? We'll call this expires. The reason why we're going to call it expires, so this way when they log in, we're going to say, all right, the time is now, your session is going to last for 10 minutes. Then we do the timestamp from now plus 10 minutes worth of seconds, 600 seconds, and then we set that as the expires time. And the reason why we're going to do it that way is that the next time that they make a request to the API, we can increase that expires time. So it's going to be 10 minutes after their last request is what we're going to do. So every time they request on the session expires time is going to go up 10 minutes from the current time. So this way their session doesn't expire every 10 minutes. They have to re-log in every 10 minutes. They just log in every 10 minutes after the last time they made a request. All right. And revoked, what that's going to do is if we have to revoke someone's access, do we need that? I don't think we need that. We don't need that right now. So we're just going to do it this way. Because this is really basic. We're just going to do it really simple. The reason I was thinking I would do revoked is like if you wanted to have someone end all of their sessions, log out of all of their devices, you would set revoked on all of the sessions. And then when they attempt to access it from anywhere, it'll see that the session is revoked, and it will treat it as being revoked. All right. Like it won't use the session is what it is. So if revoked was true, it would act like the session didn't exist. I guess you could just also delete it from the table. That's another option. All right. So we're going to do that. We've got that table in there. Now we should probably create a model for it. Sessions. Session ID data expires int. All right. And that's a Pydantic base model. And then we get the DB connection. Do we need? Yeah, we need the DB connection. Create session, insert into sessions, data, expires. Now, I'm curious. Python, SQLite, get last created row. Why does this not look like? I did put Python, yeah, all right, okay. Where is the code to do this? I know it's got to be possible. I don't want to watch a video right now. I think that's what we want right there. Return. So this is going to give us a cursor. I guess we'll find out if that works or not. Does it? I'm just like looking to see if it actually has. It does. Last row ID right there, and it's a property. It's going to return an int. So we can return that from our create function. Then we know, okay, we just inserted into sessions. It created a new row, and this is the ID of that row that was just created. So this way we know what our session ID is. One thing you don't necessarily want to do is just return this ID like that. And here's the reason why. Because if you return that ID, and now that person is storing that session ID and sending that across their network, and it's on their computer somewhere, if someone gets a hold of that session ID, like, they don't even have to get a hold of it. They can literally look at their own session ID. Like, they log in, they see their session ID, right? Now, they could just add in whatever session ID they want. So you need to randomize it, because like they could put in, like, they see that, oh, my session ID is 5. I'm going to put in session ID 4. And now whoever had who logged in one before them and got the session ID before them, now they're logged in as that person. So if that person has been active in the last 10 minutes, now this person is making requests as them because their session hasn't expired yet. So you need to randomize it somehow to make sure that you can't just jump onto someone else's session. So we'll do that. We'll find a way to do that. Just a second.
Is at the front door doorbell.
Let me check the front door. Okay. That should be dealt with now. Alright, so we're getting the row ID. We're setting up the sessions. We don't want to just use the straight row ID because that's going to be a number that's going up one at a time. Anybody could figure it out and see what's going on. So, what we want to do something different. We don't want to choose that number that's going up one at a time. In order to look it back up, we're going to have a way. So we need to have, we'll just call it token. We're going to have a column token. All right, like that. And then we're going to have token. We're going to have data. And then we're going to have expires. Right, like that. Token is going to be a string. Data will be a string. Expires will be an int. So then we're going to come back over here because we need to add in token text, not null. All right, right like that. So now we're going to generate a random token that we can use. And that will prevent people from just hopping over to someone else's session and stealing people's data. Just checking. Got a mention on here again. All right, that's nothing big deal. All right, cool. All right, so now we've got that figured out. So we're doing that. We're creating our session. Now let's get by field connection. It's going to return a list of sessions. Select star from sessions. Where field, we really don't need this function, do we? So we're going to do get. We're going to only ever do that by token. String connection, it's going to return a session. Select star from sessions. Where token equals, and actually, can we, trying to think. Let's make, I think we can make a text string. We're going to limit this to 32. So it's going to be a limited size. We're going to make that the primary key. All right. Token user ID. Token, right like that. Cursor, and then create. We're not going to create user. Create session. Row DB, return session, create session. And what are our columns? Token, data, expires, right like that. Session, right like that. Okay, cool. We didn't need this because we know what our token is, so we're setting it. All right, cool. A little bit at a time, we're getting there. So now we have a way to create sessions and to get those sessions from the database. And the next time, because the way our migrations are set up, the next time we run this, next time we run the server, it'll create that new sessions table automatically for us. Actually, is that supposed to be upgraded, incremented? Maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head. We'll increment it because I think that makes sense. All right, so now we have that. From over here, we're going to go ahead and commit this. We're going to add session table. All right. And then we come back over here. We should probably we're gonna create a file. Where do we want to create this file? Auth database. We'll create it right here. Command N pf sessions def create token. From time, import time. Okay, and then from random, import rand bytes right? Yes, no, maybe. Then from base 64, import B64. Where's encode? B64 encode. There we go. All right, that makes sense. That makes lots of sense. Like, that's gonna work. B64 and this takes bytes or takes string. I can't tell. Testing. And that's gonna complain. Expected bytes got strings, so we can do bytes right like that. Okay, cool. And bytes time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna return we're going to create a data equals byte array, right like that. And then we're going to do data trying to think if this makes sense. We'll play around with it in a second here. And create token. We're going to just do that. We're just going to play around with it. We're going to do that. So we have our byte array. So we're going to convert our byte array. We're going to B64 encode our byte array. What is this going to do? That's going to turn it into some random gibberish into something that we can use in a URL. We can put into a header. It's going to be ASCII safe. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I don't remember off the top of my head because I've also got the file number. The name in the file is numbered, and I can't remember if it's just using that number or what's going on there. So I'm just going to increment that number, and it should be fine. All right. So what we're doing here is we're going to do B64 encode so that we're going to take a random string of just random bits and bytes, and we're going to turn it into something that's ASCII, that's safe to just print out and to use, right? And then I'm going to do int time dot 2 bytes, right? And then we can do data dot extend random bytes. And let's just grab, let's do 16 bytes for now. And then let's run this file. Missing required argument length. Let's do 8. Missing required byte order. Byte order. I can't remember off the top of my head. Byte order, literal, little, or big. Now that's really cool. Like little, I don't actually care about the byte order here. But like, if you look at the docs here, it says byte order, literal, little, big. So what that's telling you is that the value, the type annotation on that arg for the 2 bytes method can either be the string little or the string big. And like what this is talking about is the endianness of the data. So if we were to come over here to go to Python, I can show you what I mean. So if I have the integer 16, right, equals 16, make that bigger so it's easier to see. Is this behind me? It might be behind me. So let's make this. Come on, go away. I don't want to highlight. I want to. Why is this not working for me? Why can't I resize my window? There we go. Make that bigger. Pull that up there. So it's above my head, right? Yeah, that's above my head. So I've got an integer 16, right? And then I want to do b.2 bytes. And I'm going to do it in 1 byte, because that'll fit inside of 1 byte. And then I want to do little. Actually, I think I need to do it in 2 bytes. The reason being to show what I want to do. So like we see we have... let me turn that into binary data. Can I do that? Nope, can't do that. All right. Well, you can see right here. So you have that /x10, /x00. Okay, so that's telling you that you have two hex numbers. One is a hex 16, which is the number 16, and then you have 0, which is the number 0. So you have 1600. So we put the little endian, it's going to order it that way. And then if I order it with the big endian, it's going to change the order of our bytes. So like we told it we want 2 bytes. So we have 1 byte here, which is 00. Then we have 1 byte, which is 10, which is 16. And then when we did big endian, it flipped the bits. So that's what endianness does. Little endian is going to order it from like the smallest byte to the largest byte. So like if we were to change the B to be 17, right? And then we were to do, if we were to do 2 bytes, because like 17 isn't going to, that's still going to fit in 1 byte. So we need to do bigger than 17. We need to do, this is going to hold up to FF. So that's 255. So if I set B to 257, we should see /x01/x01. B.2 bytes, 2 and little. It's not actually going to matter for this. See, so what happened is each byte can hold up to 255 values because a byte is 8 bits and 2 to the 8 is 256, and you go from 0 to 255. So the largest number you can hold in there is the number 255, right? So then if we roll over to 256, it's going to go up to the next byte. So then the next byte will be 1 and the other byte will be 0. So if we go to 257, we're going to have 1 in one byte and 1 in the other byte. And so that's what's happening here. And then I can change the endian. So like let's do B equals 258. And then we can see what it looks like in little endian. We have 2 and we have 1. All right. So the lower part, the lower place value, the lower byte is going to be first in little endian. And if we change it to big endian, it's going to flip that ordering. So now our smallest byte is at the last. And then the larger portion of it, the higher number in it, is going to be first. So that's what's happening here. You can change the endianness. Some operating systems do it one way, some do it another way. Different protocols expect it one way, or expect it a different way. And it's like Python lets you control the endianness of your bytes that when you convert it into bytes using that flag. All right. Okay, so next up, so what we're doing is we're just converting that. So we're going to extend that with random bytes. Then we run this, and there we go. So now we have this random string, and if we just keep, it's always random-ish. Like if you see, like if I get like 2 of them inside the same second, the first little bit stays the same because the second hasn't changed. But that last little bit is always going to be completely random. And how many characters is that? If we do, because I said, we go back over here to the database, then we go over to the migrations, migration 2. I set it to 32. So let's get this up to 32 random bits. Got 8, so we can do 24. Yep, we got, boom, 44. Why is that 44 long? Oh well, whatever. So yeah, we can just want to make sure it stays. There's 32. All right. Token equals create token. And so there we're creating some random data. It should always be 32 long. I'll probably, let me do this. We're going to go up to 32. So it's always 32 long. And if I were to make this 17, it still remains 32 long, just to be on the safe side. So it's always going to be 32 long. It will always fit correctly into our database column. All right. And like that AAAA is going to go away at some point, like because that is coming from the time portion of our, and that's because we're doing, also it's because we're doing the little endianness. Like if I changed this, right, like that, and we changed it to big, it would change where the AAA is. And the reason for that is because that's the top end of your number. So your seconds are ticking, and your seconds are ticking and they're going up by 1 every second, right? And as the day progresses, the place value that goes up closer to the end. So that's why that AAA is staying consistent while the lower end is changing, because that's the time. And the only reason I'm doing that, and I did need to make that big endian, is just so that when you have it in the database, it's going to order by that first part. So you can order by your token and they'll be in sequential time order. And that's why I did that. Like, not really anything super fancy or crazy. And actually, it's probably because how big is our time int? Like, our time int isn't necessarily all that big. So, like, if we were to come back over here, let's go back over here. And let's do from time, import time, right? And then let's do int time, right like that. And then we're going to do 2 bytes. And we're going to do, let's do the 8 like we did in the thing. And we're going to do big, so it's ordered biggest side on the left, right like that. So then we see we've got like all these, we've got we've got this great big huge section right here. Because like our byte, why is that so large? I don't understand why that's so large. Are our bytes bigger than 8 bits? Because 8 bits would be FF. Let's do this. Okay, there we go. So there we see it's 4 bytes, right like that. And then it's just inserting 4 empty bytes over here is what's happening. And then it does get some spillover, it looks like. All right, so what we can do is we can then say, all right, we just need to convert our to 4 bytes, right like that. And then we get just our numbers. So like our numbers are 4 bytes. So we can do, let's just convert that to 4. We can get rid of some of those A's. That's what we're going to do right now. And then we can make this 20. And then we run it again. There we go. We got rid of those A's for you. And you see, like, still at the end, it remains the same, but it's not a bunch of A's. Pretty fancy. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't sure how big it was going to be. I just put 8. And like you see, I did this right here because I just wanted to expand this bytes, because this is going to give me back a bytes object. And I can't use a bytes object. A bytes object is immutable. You can't change it. You can't do anything with it. So I just wanted to take that bytes object, put it into my array, my byte array, and that's what this does right here. It just says, hey, copy these bytes into this byte array, and then I wanted to extend it with some random bytes. And like we could have filled and that's another thing we could do. We could do byte array. Can we do random bytes? And then we want to do 32 bytes. Like, would this work as well? Like, that comes out a little bit shorter. It's getting overwritten entirely, maybe? Print data. And print data. Yeah, it's getting completely overwritten. So we could do up to 4, right like that. There we go. There, now we have one less command there. And so we're just grabbing 32 bytes of data, we're dumping it into the thing, we're getting, and then let me do, I'm curious if this is going over. Yeah, that goes to 44. However, the 64 works. So if we did, was it 24? 24 gets us what we want. There we go. All right, cool. So now we're just generating 24 random bytes, putting it into a byte array. Then we're overriding the first 4 bytes with the bytes from our time, so we can get ordering on it. And then we're doing the B64 encode so that it's URL safe. And we can just drop it into a header, and it makes for a nice little randomized token that's entirely random. well, pseudo random technically, because wherever it's grabbing these bytes from, it's somewhere on the computer and there's an algorithm generating them. But you get the idea. It's a pretty fancy way to generate our token. And I think that kind of looks like what you expect from, like if you were to look at a token inside of a header, you would expect to see something like that. Like, I think it's a pretty standard looking token. All right, so now we have a way to generate a random token. And that's what we're going to use when we create a session. So when we log in the user, token equals, so we're going to need to import that from server.sessions import create token. All right, so we're going to create token, and then we're going to do, we need to import sessions, import session, and then we need to create our session. Await session.create. We give it the token. And then we're going to give that, we need to give it some data. And we're going to, we got to import JSON. Import JSON. And then we're going to do JSON.dumps user ID. And that's going to be user.id, right? Yes, no, maybe. Yeah, it's ID. I don't know why it's not behaving, but whatever. So that's going to be user.id. And that's going to get dumped and put into the thing. I mean, it's just when we make a request, we're going to set the header. So like when we log in, this is going to send back the token. And then we're going to save that token somewhere in out wherever we requested it, we logged in from. We're going to hold that token in a variable, in a cookie, something, some place. And then whenever we make a request to another endpoint, we're going to provide that token as a bearer. So that's literally going to be, we're going to get this working where we send down the token. And then I'm going to, from there, we'll work on making some endpoints that you can actually request to, and you're going to have to provide the token to them. So that's the next step from this. We're making progress. We're getting there. This is, I think once we get the authentication working, things will start falling into place, like one after the other, because we've got the database working. We can create tables very easily. We just got to get this authentication. We've got user creation working. We've got user login working. We just got to get authentication working so that when the user logs in, they can now start requesting stuff from URLs, from endpoints on our API. And the API knows who they are, and they don't have to give their username and password every single time for every single URL. And that's what we're working on right here. And then we'll set up we'll start using this right here to authenticate URLs. Yeah, exactly. It'll be handled by the front end code. So I'm essentially giving the user a key, and now that user is responsible for keeping track of that key to unlock all the other API endpoints. That's literally all that's happening here. And then expires, so we have to have time. From time, import time. All right, so is that correct for this? This takes token data and expires. All right, then we've got to give it the DB, and then con, right, like that. Okay, there we go. So that should, in theory, create a session in our database, and it should then return. So I'm going to give back the user ID. Do we need to give back the user ID? We don't need to give back the user ID. We just need to give back token, right, like this. And then token, right, like that. Okay. So So this should, in theory, give back the token. So let's go back over to our test API. We have register, we have login, username, Bob, password, secret, and then response should. It will no longer have user ID. It's going to have token. And we're just going to do len token equals 32. And then if we run, it explodes. Why does it explode? We'll find out in a second, I guess. List object. Oh, okay. Let's go back over here. That's why it's complaining. Get by. So this is not the user. This is a list of users, and you see that right here. So we need to do right like that. And something else exploded. What exploded this time? No such table sessions. Why did the table not get created? Why did our migration not run? Oh, that's going to be over. Let's go over to our tests. Let's scroll up. Aha! There's why. We're just running version 1 migrations. What do we have in here? Run migrations. Import run migrations. Ta-da! There we go. So now we got our tests working with the new database, with the updated database. So now that's working. And if we do, let's see, can we do this? Can we print out response.json token? And there we go. We're able to see that we get a token. That is a valid token right there. And if we just keep, and it changes every time. Awesome. All right, so now we've got the token being sent down. So what we've got to do next is we've got to go through, let's create a route that we can just test this with. At API, at API app.get hello async def hello return hello. Now it's going to need to do user equals depends. We'll just do string for now. We're just going to do depends. All right, FastAPI.depends. And then we have to set up the scheme. Auth scheme equals auth bearer. Did I have to do any other setup on that? We don't need this. We don't need this. We don't need that anymore. We come over here. This is what we need right here. So how is he setting up? Depends. That's the get active user, get current user, auth scheme. How is he setting up? Token URL, token. All right, like that. Not sure what that means right now. We could probably look into that later. So now, if I go over here and we say, OAuth scheme. So that depends on OAuth scheme, right? And then if we come over here and we kill that, redo that, and we go over here. Nope, not what I wanted. Not what I wanted. Go away. Now we have hello, and we see hello has a lock on it. Username. We don't have anybody in our database. It's not going to work. authorize, errors not found. Where did that request? That requested to /token. I'm not sure how that functions. So that's something we're going to have to figure out. Not sure yet. How did he have... Wait, what? Okay. Now I understand what that is. This right here is telling it where to go to get the token. Right? Yes? No? Maybe? All right. And then if we go to authorize, I don't know what that possibly could be, so we're just going to keep changing it. No, thank you. So then now that time it went to login, right? And that gave back probably a token. So then if I go over here to hello, try it out, execute, it comes back with hello. And before, if we come up here and we go to authorize and we go to log out, and then we go close, and then we do execute, this time we get not authenticated. So now we have a system that works for something. I'm not sure exactly why. Post to login, Zach. Is it creating the user? I'm a little bit confused right now about what exactly is happening. Logger. .log. Login attempt. Form data dot username. Form data dot password. And then let's come over here. Right like that. Whoop. Goof something up. Now let's try that again. Authorize. Authorize. I hit the wrong thing. Let's do info. Supposed to do that. All right. Let me come back over here. Reload it. Authorize. Test. Authorize. No, thank you. And then we come over here, and then it says login attempt zech test. Close. Now, why is that working? Did we create a user zech test? So if we come back in here and we go authorize, log out, and then I do Bob testing 1, 2, 3. I'm pretty sure we haven't created that. Never. And that worked. I even misspelled testing. So why is that saying it worked? Oh, you know why? I know why. So if we come over here, let's add user, and let's do a bang R, right? So let's see what it's putting in there. Let's see what it's putting inside the token. It's putting something inside the token, and I know why it's not working. I'll explain in just a second here. We're going to reload this, and we're going to go up here to authorize, and we're going to do Bob testing, lots of randomness. So this way we know for sure that user doesn't exist, right? And then if I come over here and I do hello, try it out, execute, hello undefined. It's not being set. The reason why it's not being set is because when it fails, so like let me go in here. We're going to do log info login failed. All right. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to do login succeeded. All right. And then we're going to come back over here and we're going to do this right like that. We're going to run it. We're going to come back here. We're going to reload and we're going to go authorize Bob, not a password. And then we're going to authorize, and it says login attempt Bob, not a password, login failed. But because we just return and we don't set the status to a failure code, it works. It's not supposed to work, but it does. So now we have to figure out what we have to raise. FastAPI dot HTTP exception 401 details optional any. I think this is where this data goes. Right like that. Right like that. And then if we come over here and we run this again, and then we come over here and we do reload, and then we authorize, and we're going to do Bob, bunch of randomness, authorize, 401 unauthorized, error unauthorized, okay? So we don't have any users in our database. So that means if I come over here and I go register and I do try it out, and then I do Bob, and I'm going to do test as the password, okay? And I'm going to do execute, all right? So we just had an execute to register. It seems like it worked. And then if I come over here, authorize, Bob, test, authorize, that worked. And login succeeded. Bob attempt worked, okay? Then we come over here. I don't know how this is going to work. So let's do try it out, execute, and then it still comes back as undefined. So we got to figure out how we give back the token. What do we pass back as the token so that it understands what it's looking for? All right. So how does this work? How do we make this function? So he's telling it to go to the token URL. Does he have a token? He has his token URL right here. All right. So now how does he do this? He returns access token and token type bearer. So we need to do that inside our login function. All right. Right here, access token. We're not going to return username. We're going to return token. Right like this. We're going to restart the server. Boom. We're going to come back over here. We're going to reload. We should already have, because we're not using our database is, where's our database? How are we setting up our database? Connection to our database. We're doing DB connection, get DB connection, config, server config. Import server.config, DB. So our database is going to be inside of, do we have a config.json? We do not have a config.json. So it's going to be inside of data.db, which we have right there. That doesn't get reset on each rerun of the server. So we should already have our Bob user inside the database, right? So we should immediately be able to jump right over to authorize and do Bob test authorize. It worked. Okay. Then we can come over here to hello, which is locked. And we can say, try it out, execute. Executes, it sends in our authorization with our bearer token, and there's our token right there inside our header, okay? And then it says hello, and it shows our token right there inside the hello response. So there we go. We have authentication working. We can set it on any URL we want, and it just works. Boom, boom, boom. Pretty awesome. Okay, what are we going to work on next? Only took 2 hours. That's incredible. 2 hours, we got authentication working on. As long as you have that token, all you have to do is set up your headers right like this. You have this bit. I mean, it'll work anywhere we want to put it. We could go, let me go over to our test tape. Where did our scratch file go? Go away. Didn't want that. There we go. Get that back. So if we go back to our Scratch file, we can do login, username, Bob, password test, right? And it's going to return, our token is going to be data response.json, and then access token, right, like that. We can print out our token. Okay. Let's run this file. What was the header that it's supposed to give us back? We go back over to here. Yeah, it should be it's underscore token. Access underscore token, right, like that. So then if we run this. All right, so must not be detail status failed. Why on earth is this not working? Was it lowercase? We got Bob test. That should work, should it not? Very odd. So let's register another user. Register Tom test, and then we're going to log in with Tom. What is happening? Oh, I see. I have uppercase T. Oh, we need to get rid of this. There we go. Now it worked. I don't know why that password wasn't working. I must have punched in the password wrong on Bob. Whatever. So we got Tom working. So that's now giving us back that. So we should be able to do JSON access token, right, like that. And then we should be able to print out the token, right, like that. And then we should be able to take this, and we should be able to do, and then we don't have to send any data. We just have to send headers, authorization, right? That's how they spelled it in here. Authorization, and then we just have to do bearer, and then we do token, right, like that. And then we should be able to do print response.content. Too many. There we go. Missing body password. What are you talking about? I went to the wrong URL. All right, hello. Method not allowed. What did I name this? What did I do wrong? /hello/ Oh, we're posting. Get. There we go. Boom. And it didn't give me back what I expected. Why did it not give me back what I expected? Oh, and that's because right now, the hello URL, hello, if we come over here, all this is doing right here is checking that the header is set. It's not checking that the header is valid or anything like that. So I can literally set anything after here and it'll use that. So it literally, I didn't set this up as an F string, so it literally sent this as the token. And so that showed up in the response. So now if I change this, right, like that, you'll see it now is the actual token that we got right here. So if I print out print token, right, like that, let's decode that. Why does that got quotes around it? I don't know. But it's like you see right now, like we were able to print out the token. And then we're able to just pass that token inside the header, and it shows up in our response. So then the next step would be to create that get current user. Async def get current user, right, like that. And then we need to depend on DB, right, like this. Actually, it's not going to be user. We're going to do it this way. That's not going to be the user. That's going to be the session. All right. So then we're going to do right like that. And then sessions create get session. Okay. So that let's think. We're going to need to move this into here. So we're going to have, this is going to have async def get session. And that's going to end up depending on this. So we've got to get that import. Right, like that. So now we have that in here. And then we're going to have create token. We're going to have get session. And we're going to need to import, we'll just do from FastAPI. Import depends. And this is going to have, how did he do it in his code? In his code, get current active user, get current user depends on all. He calls that token. All right, okay. So that's what that makes sense because that's what that's getting. So we have token equals a string, and it's going to equal depends on auth scheme. All right. And then so we're going to have our token, and we're going to need to also depend on DB. And that's going to be, we need to import. Where does that come from? DB comes from right here. Wrong thing. Wrong thing. So we're going to import DB or connection so we don't overlap with the environment or the globals. And then we do depends on DB, right? Like that. Okay. So now we should have the database and we should have the token inside our get session. Now we need to do from server.database.models.sessions, import session. And then we can do await get session. And the token, we pass in the token, right? And then we're going to need to import time from time, import time, because we have to be able to check if the token has expired. Okay, all right. And then we're going to do return. We got to get JSON, so we have to load that data from that thing. JSON, import JSON. All right, so it's kind of just falling into place right now, I think. So loads session dot data. Yeah, that's going to be a session object. So we're going to do data. Okay. And then we do if not session, return an empty dictionary. So there's nothing in the session. And then if or session dot expires. Why is this not? There we go. That'll fix that problem. Now we should get some autocomplete that expires. There we go. If session that expires is less than time. So if the expires is in the past, it's expired, return nothing. So the session is over. We need to pass in con. right like that. Otherwise, we have a valid session, so we can load the data from the JSON and return that. And so then we should have, this will depend on get session. Now, if we do this, and then we come back over to here, internal server error. So we didn't get a row. Okay, so we have to go into the model file because it's in here, right here, where we do get, create session, if. So it didn't find a session. What did it not, what happened? Why is it not saving the session? Did it not execute? Oh, you know what? I think we're not committing. That might be the problem. Still internal server error. And if we come back over here... Oh, you know what? I didn't restart the server. You need to restart the server for changes to the server to work. Still blowing up. So that just means that, like, when we're doing the create session, inside here, this right here is none. So that means, which is being called from here, so the row is none. So the fetch one is none. Select star from sessions where token equals token. Our token is this right here. So this could be none. If, right? No? Yes. I'm confused why it would have a, like, the session wouldn't be in the database. We're doing db.commit. What if, no, it's a db. Why is this not working? Why? Why are you not working? Do we have... import logging info creating session token data expires. Let's restart the server. Oh, good Lord. Creating session. There's our token. It matches. It's correct. User ID is 3, and it has this there. So then let's add some logging to this. Logging.info getting token got row. All right, so let's scroll back up. So it matches. Why? Why are you doing this? Got none. So did nothing get put in the database? Just for the heck of it. Logging.info duplicate. Select star from sessions We don't care. As cursor, logging.info. I think that's what we want. And then return. And just return. All right. Wait for PyCharm to come back to life. Come on. Then we come over here. Oh, cursor fetch all. All right. What is going on here? Oh, yes. That makes so much sense. Do you see what's getting stored in the database for our, like here's right here, it's printing it out. This is what is getting stored in the database. We're storing bytes. But I'm pretty sure when I'm doing the select, let's find out. Let's see. When I do the select, where is it? Creating session. Oh, I can't see it. Oh, you know why? Because I'm stupid. There we go. If we do this, explodes again. Creating session, getting, yeah, see? So we're getting a regular string. And what's being stored in the database is bytes. So if we do, so where we call create, we need to come back here. We need to come over here to sessions. And when we need to encode, we need to decode this. So this way, this is a string and not a bytes object. And then if we come over here and we do this, and then I come back over here and run it, it's exploding. There's a validation error for session ID. So there's a validation error. Why is there a validation error? Model sessions. Aha. Token string. Now, ta-da! So now it's grabbing the session from the database and it's returning that to the thingamajigger. All right, cool. All right, awesome. So, what do we need to do next here? We need to get rid of all that logging I added because we don't need that in there right now. Get rid of that. Okay. All right, so now we're making progress. We're making progress slowly but surely. So it's getting the session. If we go back to Scratch 2, bear content to code. Let's see, it's not running. Let me just make sure that's still working. All right, so that's still working. It's getting the user ID for the person with that access token, the person that just logged in. So if we were to get that user, so let's go back over to let's play with this some more. We come over here. Whoop, I went to the wrong thing. Gotta go here. We come over here, and so we get that session, and now we're going to get the user. So equals user await user dot get session user ID, and then we're going to do user dot name. And then we come back over here, kill that, reload. And there we have a server error. I forgot to pass it the database. So we need to do con equals FastAPI.depends DB, right like that. Con, there we go. What are you complaining about? Not sure why you think you got a string, but we'll find out in a minute if it worked. Hello, Tom. And like if we go back to our scratch.py, we're logging in as Tom, and then we're getting that access token, and then we're requesting the URL, and we're passing in the token as the bearer, and so the hello endpoint knows that it's Tom requesting because he passed in his bearer token. All right, so it's working. We've got the code functioning. We've got it doing what we want it to do. We're ready to add in more endpoints. We're ready to start making things actually function. Probably like next week, we're going to end up working on uploading files. Finally, it's taken so much time, but like we've gotten there. We've got it working. We've got something functioning. We're able to set a URL that is authenticated. We can figure out who was the one. So like something we might do now. I'm trying to think. Do we want to do like? I don't think we want to do that. I think we're good. I think we're good there. Like the one thing we might do is this get session right here. Maybe update this data to actually have the user, which wouldn't be hard at all. We would just do. Oh, we're not checking for expirations. Or no, we are. Wait, are we? Oh, we imported twice. I see why. Okay, so we imported twice. So we're checking for expirations. If it's expired, it doesn't get used. We're setting the expiration to 10 minutes right over here when we log in. One thing we don't have working yet, because like see, it's getting set to 10 minutes from the current time. The one thing we don't have working just yet is when you request the URL, it should update the session. That'll be something we'll have to do. That'll have to be a to-do. If I do to-do, update session expiration. So like that'll be what to do for next time probably. We might do that inside of get session. Do we do that? Yeah, we can actually do that. Yeah, totally. We could totally do that inside of get session. So then we could do like await update session. Refresh session. Like right like that. We would pass in con, and we'd pass in token, right like this. So then we do async def. Refresh session. Token string con. And then we do await con dot. How do we do this? Oh, you know what? Even better. Even better. This is the even better way to do it. And we do session dot refresh. And then we do pass it con, await. Right like that. And then we go over to the session object. And we create an... We don't want it to be a class method. This is just going to be a regular method. And we're going to do async def refresh self. We need the connection. And then we need to import time. Right like that. And then we're going to do await db dot execute update SQLite update. Just want to make sure we get the syntax right. Update sessions set, what are we doing? We're setting the expires equal to, and then we do question mark, where token equals question mark, and then we do self dot int time plus 600 for 10 minutes. And then we do token self.token. All right, there we go. That simple. That should, in theory, refresh our token. And just to test it, import logging. And then we'll do import or logging.info, updating, refreshing session, self.token, self.expires, and then we'll do like that. What are you complaining about? Oh, I see. I grabbed one too many characters. There we go. Refreshing session. And then we do that. And then we come over here and we run it. And then you see info root, refreshing session. There's our token. There's the time that it was currently expiring at. And then there's the time it's being set to expire at. It runs so fast that it's the same time. Yeah, that was a great idea. Yeah, you can totally put the refresh right there inside of the get session. And so when it successfully gets the session, so when we successfully get the session, we refresh it. So anytime we successfully get a session, we refresh the time on it, and that should be fine. It's like every 10 minutes. If they haven't done anything, it'll expire, and they will get logged out. And then if they keep doing stuff, it'll say connected. Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's db commit. Good point. Let's see. Sessions. db await. There we go. Alrighty. Okay, so we got that working. So now we've got the refresh working. So we can come back over here. We've completed this to-do. We don't have to worry about that anymore. We are able to do that correctly. What else is there to do? I think we're pretty much set for today. Next week, like I said, next week we can actually start working on some actual endpoints that actually do interesting things. And then it's like we'll be able to actually do interesting things like uploading files, creating folders, like listing files, because now we can authenticate a user pretty simply and just by getting their session. So all they have to do is log in, and then tell us their token every time they connect, and that'll let us grab the session, which will let us get their user ID. And if we need to store anything else in the session, we can totally do that now. Pretty awesome. It's all working. Let me get rid of this. We don't want to be printing out their password. So let's just go ahead and commit everything we did. Lost connection to my mouse. That's useful. All right. But okay, whatever. Let me plug that in. Maybe the battery died on it. Pull that wire out. Uh-oh. Do I get my mouse back? Well, it's clicking. Now, there we go. Must have had the battery die on my mouse. Weird. Alright, so we had to install multi-part, so let's commit that. Add the Python multi-part package. And then we're going to do sessions. Stage lines. And change the session ID to token. Commit new sessions to the DB. Add session refresh method. And then add methods for handling sessions. Update tests for sessions. And then finally, implement authentication. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody wondering anything about it? Like, now would be the time. We're still here. We're just finishing up. We're just wrapping up. I think we're pretty close to done. I don't think I have time to implement anything else at this point. Made a lot of progress. It was a lot of fun. Like, everything is on there. Everything that we just did today is on my GitHub. So if we go, I hit the right button. Why is it not doing the thing I want it to? GitHub. So if we go to my GitHub, like, everything's on my GitHub. It's inside my zech.builds YouTube organization. View organization. There we go. So like, we've got the file storage web app. Everything I just did just got committed up here. So like, if you look in here, we've got the sessions file that I just created. Everything's there. If you want to mess with the code, you can. It's all there, ready to go. You can play with it. You can do what you want. It's using SQLite. So literally, you just have to run it. You just have to run Poetry, install. It'll install everything you need. Then Poetry, run Python-m server, and it'll launch. And I think do I have that in here? I don't have that in here. So we should add that to the README. So we can do that real quick. If you got any questions, let me know, because I'm going to be here for a couple more minutes getting all of this set up and working. All right, so let's see. Running. Poetry. Poetry install. Poetry run Python-m server. Git add. Update README with running instructions. Oh yeah, we're intending to build a CLI client for it and everything. Like, so it's just a matter of getting there. We got to get all the API endpoints done, which is probably the hardest part. We've got to learn FastAPI. We've got to mess around with all the little things, and like, we're trying to go a little bit more ground up with it. Like I said, building our own like hashing function for passwords. We created our own migration system, and now we just created our own authentication system. So like not using JWTs or anything like mainstream. We just rolled our own and created our own session system to store like the user ID inside a JSON object in our database, and the user gets a pseudo-random session ID that's not easily guessable. So it's secure. It's fairly secure. I think it's about as secure as I could get it right now using just like what I can do myself. It's a little less convenient because you have to connect to the database to grab anything you need from there, any information you need from the session, which is where the JWT would shine. Like we could literally put the user ID right in the JWT and not have to worry about anybody tampering with it. But this is the alternative. This is the other way to do it. Like if you ever use like WordPress, this is pretty much how they do it. They give you a session ID. Like if you look, the way PHP works is if you look in your cookies on anytime you go to a PHP website, you're going to see that PHP session ID cookie get created, and it's going to have a session ID right there in that cookie that is being used to look up your session from the database on the server. And that'll have a key value store of all your information, which is what we just did. We just created a session ID that we can look up in our database to get back a key value store that we of all the information that we want to store for your session. Oh yeah, for sure. Redis would be a great use case for this kind of thing because that's just a key value store. It's just a lot simpler for me to use my little SQLite database to just create a table to pull up that information. But yeah, for sure. And like the cool thing with like Redis is you should be able to set like an expiry time on your data. So you don't even have to check the expiration on the session. It'll just expire and disappear from the database after a set period of time. So it can handle a lot of that stuff more simply. It's another step. It's another thing to set up. So I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to use my SQLite database and make it function, make it work. So yeah, pretty simple. It's pretty cool. And yeah, this is the general to-do. We're still on step 1 of this to-do list. REST API using FastAPI. Yeah, we might want to create a cleanup for sessions in the database. Like I said, this is a small scale, very simple, very basic web service that's not intended for public use. It's intended for just to be like a little toy that we can play with on our own computers. So you're not going to have like hundreds of thousands of logins. Like SQLite will be fine up to very large file sizes. So you'll be able to store a lot of sessions in there without a problem. It'll handle it. So for our uses, this is perfectly fine. In the real world, yeah, you want to either have something that's going to automatically handle expiring out those sessions, or you're going to want to have some kind of cron task in the background that's going through wiping out any old expired sessions. So yeah, yep, that's how that works. It's not too complicated. Once you see how it works and how it's done, I think it makes sense. It's pretty easy to make sense of what's actually going on. The hardest part that we've had here is just understanding how FastAPI works. FastAPI has its opinionated way of how to do things, and that partly comes from the fact that it's built on a bunch of standards. Like it's using the Open API standard, which is what lets us, like if I rerun this, and we go over to here, to our Swagger docs, our Swagger UI, this is an Open API standard. So like you can actually see the JSON file that details everything that's on our website. So like we have our servers, and then we have our paths, So like for this server, we have a register path, and then like it gets a summary, register user, operation ID, register user, register post, and like required, false schema. Like it tells you all the little details about every single endpoint. That's because he's following those standards. And then like what I just implemented today is that's the OAuth bearer token standard. So like you have to return all the stuff in the specific ways. So like this right here, what I'm returning here, that's not just randomness. That's all a standard. The reason why he had to use form data here is because the OAuth 2 standard says the username and password needs to be submitted as form data. So like, there's a lot of learning. There's a bit of a learning curve to get an understanding of how FastAPI works. And a lot of that is coming from he wants to do it by the book. And he wants to make it function exactly the way these standards say it should function. And that gives you a lot of interoperability. Like you can literally just you should be able to use Postman with this, I believe. And like just everything will just work out of the box. You just tell it like, this is how we authenticate and yada, yada, yada. And that's what it's going to do. So it's pretty slick. It's pretty cool. It works really well. Like, actually, I'm curious. Login. Yeah, right there. You can see right there. Our token URL is inside this OpenAPI JSON file, and it tells you it's at the login endpoint. And like it tells you OAuth 2 password bearer, OAuth 2 flows password scopes. There are no scopes set for it, and the token URL is login. So it knows to get the token, it has to go to the login endpoint. And then it's going to look for this access token. And it's going to know, because it knows it's an OAuth 2 type bearer password, it's going to know it's going to need to form submit to the login endpoint, because that's what we set as our token URL. And it's going to have to form submit the username and the password. And then it's going to get back an access token. So like all this stuff, it's a learning curve, but it brings with it all that compatibility with all that other stuff and all that other technology that is out there. And they don't have to know anything about how our system works and what our system is doing to get access to everything that's on it. So yeah, that's how it works. That's why it's kind of hard to understand. It's just, you get all this other stuff for free because you're following a standard and you're using a package that is opinionated to allow you to follow those standards very easily. And it doesn't feel super easy when you're submitting form data and it's yelling at you saying that nothing is being submitted. It doesn't feel easy when you accidentally are submitting JSON data because everything else requires JSON data and this one thing now requires form data. Like, it doesn't feel easy at that point. But like, once you understand it and you understand how it all functions, it's super easy to work with. And like Wednesday night, I was trying to figure out how to make this all work, and I had to do some reading on it. Like I stopped off a little bit early to figure out how all this works. And like today, it still took a little bit of head banging and hunting through the documentation and trying to figure out how exactly it functions. So yeah. It takes time, but like now I have it working, and I can now Wednesday night when I do my stream working on the file sharing service, I'll be able to just throw this together now because I have a pretty good understanding of how it functions. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun today. I'm looking forward to next week when we can finally get this really close to being done. Like next week we'll be able to get the file uploads working, hopefully. Like that'll be a little bit tricky. File uploads are always a little bit tricky. Hopefully FastAPI makes it super easy. I haven't looked at it. We'll find out. But we'll be able to get the file uploads working. We'll be able to get the file listing working. We should be able to get folder creation working. It should be pretty good. We should be able to get pretty close to having a working system, a working API for storing and retrieving files. And it should be pretty interesting. Like, I think that should probably be about 3 hours. Getting this API fleshed out to the point where we can start working on the CLI app in 2 weeks. Well, Memorial Day is in 2 weeks. I don't know what my plans are for Memorial Day. I'll definitely be on next Sunday working on this. The following Sunday I might have to take off, but we'll see. We're getting close. We're making a lot of progress on it. and we're getting really close to having something functional. Like it's going slow because we're doing it in 3-hour sessions, like 1 week and then another week, and then like we skip a week. So it's like it's a little bit of progress every week, every couple weeks, but like we're getting there and we're making something really interesting. And we're having a lot of fun while we're at it, and we're learning a lot while we're at it. So, all right, I think I'm gonna call it a day. Like I said, everything's on the GitHub. All the information to follow me on Twitter and Discord is in the description. So if you're not already following me, you're not already on our Discord, we've got 7,300 members as of today. Feel free to join us. Like, we're a fun community. We have that small community vibe, even though we have a lot of members. You can definitely get help with any coding questions you have. All right. Y'all have a great week.